So hello everyone and welcome to this video series on how to make an aircraft in Autodesk Fusion 360. So last year I made a time-lapse video of me modeling the Airbus A350 and I got a few requests to make a step-by-step video series on this. Unfortunately I didn't have a lot of time so I couldn't do this earlier. Now before we start this properly I want to talk about a few things and I think it's very important that you do not skip this bit. So what I want to do in this video series is introduce the mindset behind how to model the aircraft in Fusion 360 with hopes that you take this knowledge and what you do with it is you can then look at an aircraft and pretty much in your head think about how you can model this when you start modeling it. I think it's good for planning purposes as well. So there are a couple of reasons why you might want to do this, and the question I need you to ask yourself is how much detail do I want to go into? So if you are a hobbyist or a graphic student and all you really care about is the visual side of things, then you can pretty much follow exactly what I'm doing in this video and you'll be good. However, if you are an aeronautical engineering student like me and you are doing this for your aerial vehicle design project or your group design project, or you're just trying to show your baseline configuration, again, you can pretty much follow what I'm doing. However, if you are doing this for computational fluid dynamics, you probably need to go into more detail than what I'm going to show you here. However, in each step, I will probably give you a bit of a brief as to how you can go into more detail if you want to. You might also be an RC enthusiast where you actually want to print this model. Again, I would say that use this video series as a foundation and then go ahead and make your own modifications later on. So what are the things that we need in order to successfully model this? We're going to obviously need your Autodesk Fusion 360 ready to go. You're going to need your basic Fusion 360 skills. Now, what I mean by this is that you should know how to sketch, how to extrude, revolve, sweep, loft, etc. The basic tools that come with Fusion 360. And I also recommend knowing how to do the basics of T-splines. It just helps knowing the environment that you're going to be using, and also it helps knowing what tool does what. If you do not know these things, I highly recommend that you go on, follow a very basic tutorial series on Fusion 360, and then come back to this video. Okay, then the next things we're going to be needing are aircraft blueprints. So I'm going to be talking about these in more detail in a bit. We're also going to need a photo editing software. So you don't really need things like Photoshop. You can pretty much just use like Microsoft Paint or whatever you have on Apple. And you're going to also need some reference images. So the reason why I say this is because sometimes it's a bit tricky to really understand what's happening on the different sides of the aircraft when you're modeling it just by looking at 2D. So when you have reference 3D images of real aircraft, it's a bit easier to understand what's going on. Lastly, you're going to need curiosity and patience. Now, I don't want to sound cheesy, but this is not going to be the easiest model that you're going to make. And as a result, you need a bit of time, you need to invest a bit of time to really understand what's going on so that when you design more aircraft in the future, the process just becomes a bit more streamlined, no pun intended. Okay, perfect. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we need are blueprints. Now, blueprints are basically just drawings of the aircraft model that you want to make. In this blueprint that you see in front of you, we have a 3-view drawing of the 737. So we've got a front view, a side view, and a top view. Now, some blueprints will give you more views, some blueprints will give you less views. I think 3 is pretty decent because it captures the overall detail of the entire aircraft. And you'll see this when we start modeling it in more detail. Now, there are a couple of things that you want to look out for when you're selecting a blueprint. So all you need to do is just go into Google and type in the aircraft that you want to make, and then type in blueprints. So you'll see a bunch of images will come up. So what is the right way, or what is the most efficient way of selecting a blueprint? So let's go back to the blueprint that I have. Here again, like I said, we've got 3 views, and again, it captures the overall idea of what's happening in the aircraft. Another thing you want to look out for are dimensions. So in this blueprint, you can see that we've got some dimensions for the wingspan, for the horizontal tail span as well. We've got a nose to, it's basically the fuselage span, and we've also got the length from the tip of the nose to the tip of the empennage. So we've got a couple of dimensions that we can work with, and this is incredibly useful when we are calibrating this, when we set up these images in Fusion 360. Another thing you want to look out for are the high quality. So this image is 2000 by 1520, and the reason why you want this to be of high quality is because essentially we're going to be cropping these pictures per view, and that's going to reduce the size of each image. So the higher quality it is, the better it is, because you can then see it more clearly when we're modeling it. Again, this is something that will become more obvious to you when we start modeling. So it's very important that we have a high quality image. Another thing I want to mention is the one that you see in front of you is a free image that I just found on Google. If you want to go into more detail, you can go to theblueprints.com and make a register an account, and you can find some really high quality, really detailed paid blueprints as well. If that's something that you want to do, feel free to do so. But for this tutorial, I think it's decent if we just go ahead with this one. Okay, so once you have your choice of blueprints and you've ensured that they're of high quality, they most probably have dimensions, and they have 3 views, the next thing we want to do is crop them. So the way we're going to crop this is using any photo editing software, and it doesn't really matter. I've got Photoshop, so that's what I used. You could use Paint, you could use Windows, Photo Editor, whatever you want. But the key thing is the way you crop it. The way you crop it is that you want the edges of the aircraft to touch the edges of the boundary of the picture. So for example, in this picture, for example, in the top view, we've got the tip of the nose touching the boundary of the picture, and over here we've got the tip of the empennage touching the boundary of the picture, and so as well with the wingtips as well. The same thing can be said for the side view and for the front view. Now again, it doesn't have to be super exact. It can be a rough estimate. For example, if I zoom in to the end over here, you'll see that it's not quite touching it, but it's somewhat there. Again, the level of detail, again, depends completely on you. But I think for me, I'm perfectly happy just leaving it as it is. And now we can go ahead and set this up in Fusion 360. Okay, so once we have our blueprints cropped, and again, just remembering that the blueprints are as close to the boundary as possible, what we want to do is now import these inside of Fusion 360. So the way we set this up is in a side view, top view, and front view configuration. So when you open Fusion 360, you're going to have a blank page over here. And before we do anything, there are 2 things we want to check. The first thing we want to check is right-clicking on the cube on the right-hand side and making sure that this is an orthographic. So orthographic basically just means that when you're in the front view, you're basically seeing only the front view and there's no perspective involved. Okay, the other thing we want to check is the units. So when you go to your folder tree, under document settings, you want to make sure that this is either millimeter or meter. I'm going to stick with millimeter. It doesn't really matter what units you are in as long as you're consistent throughout. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is import the side view. So what we want to do is go into your solid workspace, go into insert, and we're going to insert a canvas. And by looking at this reference picture that Fusion provides, you can already imagine what we're going to do with this canvas. So we're going to click on canvas and we're going to say insert from computer, and we're going to click on the side one that you have got. Okay, so once we have this, what we're going to do is select one of the planes. Now in my case, this is my side view, and this is the YZ plane. I do recommend for the purposes of this tutorial that you follow the same plane. So for the YZ plane, that's going to be our side view. So currently it's not very visible, so we're just going to click on this button over here to scale it. But again, this is very arbitrary scaling and it's not very accurate. And what we want to do is scale this blueprint to the correct size of the actual aircraft. And we're also going to position it in a way that when we import the other blueprints, which are the front view and the top view, it will make sense in 3D space. So you'll see what we're going to do. So we're just going to quickly click OK, and we have this blueprint here, but again, it's not of the right size. So a technique that I like to use is of sketching something and then calibrating that sketch to then expand the blueprint. So let's do that very in detail. So what we want to do is I'm going to click on create sketch, and I'm going to create a sketch on the same plane that this canvas was imported to. So in that case, it's the YZ plane. And let's go back to our reference blueprint. So in this blueprint, we have, so in this blueprint, we've been given the length from the tip of the nose to the tip of the end of the fuselage. So from there to there, that is 124 feet and 9 inches. So what we're going to do is we basically want to draw the same line in Fusion 360. Now, the way I like to do that is by clicking on a line, going super close to the tip of the nose, making a mark, and just drawing a vertical line downwards. So vertical line downwards means 90 degrees angle. So once we do that, we've got a vertical line downwards, and then we're going to draw a horizontal line from there to somewhere over there. Again, this doesn't matter, we're going to trim it. Okay, then we're going to zoom in to the end of the fuselage, not the end of the empennage, but the end of the fuselage. And we're going to draw a vertical line downwards. Okay, so once you're done with that, you can press escape and okay, so once you've pressed escape, you're now free from the line tool. Now what we want to do is trim the end of these lines. So if you just press T on your keyboard, or you could go to modify and trim. What we want to do is we just want to trim the end. So we're going to trim this one and we're going to trim this one. Again, we don't really need the two vertical lines anymore, so you can get rid of those as well. And again, once you're done with that tool, just press escape. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is scale it. So now we have the same line that we had in the blueprints. So from the tip of the fuselage, from the tip of the nose to the tip of the end of the fuselage. So tip of the nose and the tip of the end of the fuselage. Now, we know this value. We know this value is 124 feet and 9 inches. But the problem here is that this was given in feet and inches, whereas my workspace is in millimeters. That's not a huge problem. All you need to do is just go to Google and type in 124 feet 9 inches equals to millimeter. And Google just does everything for you. So we're just going to copy this value here. We're going to go back to Fusion. And what we're going to do next is finish this sketch. Go to Canvases, right-click on the side that you had, and click on Calibrate. And what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in. Okay, let's press that again, Calibrate. And what we want to do is click as close as possible to the white dot over there. And then we're going to go to the other end of the white line, white dot. And this is basically telling me the current length of this line. However, we do not want this line to be 280.57 millimeters. We want it to be 38,000. So once you put in that value that we found from Google, press enter, and don't worry, it's not disappeared. It's just scaled up by a very large amount. So if we zoom out, you can see that this is now the correct length of the fuselage. Now, I no longer need that line over there, so what I can do is just hide the sketch over here. Okay, perfect. So once we've done this, what we're going to do next is, if you look at the origin, you'll see that, again, the aircraft is in a very arbitrary place. So I'm going to right-click on the side and I'm going to click Edit Canvas. And what I'm going to do now is drag this in a way that the red line, which is the front of that, matches up with the y-axis, and the nose of the aircraft touches the origin. Again, it doesn't have to be super precise, but the detail is completely dependent on how far you want to go. So this is good enough for me. So if you just zoom in, you can see that the tip of the nose is almost touching the origin, which is exactly what I want. So once you press OK, you'll now see that this is our first side complete. Okay, so what we've done so far is used a reference sketch to then calibrate the entirety of the side. And then we've repositioned this such that the nose of the aircraft is touching the origin. What we're going to do next is we're going to do the same thing for the front of the aircraft and for the top of the aircraft. So if you want to skip this part, you can, or alternatively, you can fast forward it. I will be going in real time just in case anybody needs to go through it step by step for both of the sides. Okay, so insert canvas, and this time I'm going to do the front view. And again, so in this case, my front view is going to be the YX plane, which is this one. And again, you can just use that small button over there to then expand it, at least arbitrarily for now. At least we're in the correct magnitude of the length. Okay, then same thing, we're going to draw a sketch from here to here. And again, so if we look back to the reference blueprint we had a dimension from the wingtip to the other wingtip, which is 112 feet and 7 inches. So I'm going to go to Google. 112 feet 7 inches is giving me 34,305. So I'm just going to copy this value onto my clipboard, go back to Fusion. I'm going to draw a line from that point to that point over there, making sure that it's horizontal, which means the value highlighted in blue now is 0 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to do that and just click enter, or on that green button, or escape, anything will do. Okay, escape again to get rid of the line tool. And again, we're going to click on front. So right click on front, calibrate, and then we're going to go zoom into that white dot over there, zoom out, and go spray in over here. Perfect. Okay, and I'm going to control V, the value that we found from Google after converting from feet, inches to millimeters. And you can see that it's slightly scaled it up. And hopefully this should be the correct size of the blueprint. So I don't need the sketch anymore, so I'm just going to hide the sketch, finish sketch. Oops. And now, even though it's the correct scale, it's not in the correct position. So what we need to do now is right click on front again, click on edit canvas, and just go up and hopefully align it such that the center, so the nose of that should be touching the origin again. And also ensuring that in the horizontal direction that the aircraft is symmetrical, which in this case it seems like is the case. Okay, and before we click continue or click OK, we want to make sure that it makes sense from the side as well. So if you just do a rough sort of front right middle angle, you'll see that it sort of does make sense. And if I click on the edge over here on the right hand side of the cube, we should notice that the cockpit from the front view and the cockpit from the right view should almost align perfectly, and it does. So that's good. That means that we've scaled it correctly and we've also positioned it correctly. Okay, perfect. Again, we're going to repeat this process for the top side of the aircraft. So I'm going to go and click Insert, Canvas, Insert from Computer, and Top. So I'm going to click on this face, which is now the top view, and the plane is ZX, or ZX, however you want to pronounce it. Okay, I'm going to zoom it so that it's at least in this correct magnitude. Now, you'll see over here that the top view, in my case, has been aligned or oriented incorrectly, so it's actually facing in the other direction. That's not a problem. If you just go back to top view and you click on this circle over here, you'll see that you can actually rotate it without losing any other dimensions. Okay, so now that it's in the correct magnitude, what we want to do next is repeat the process. So firstly, we're going to scale it. So again, let's look at the reference blueprint we have. So in the reference blueprint, we're given a dimension from the tip of the nose to the tip of the empennage. Alternatively, you could also use the dimension from the wingtip to the other wingtip. So that's 112 feet 7 inches. So that would go from there to there. I'm going to use the value for the wingtip because I already know what it is in millimeters, and all I need to do is now copy paste it. So I'm going to do that. So let's go back to Fusion. I'm going to create a sketch on this top plane. And again, what we want to do is click on that line, and we want to go from this one to the other wingtip, making sure that it's a vertical line, which means that now the value highlighted in blue is 0. So we're going to click on that and press escape, and press escape again. Okay, so now again that we've just marked out the wingspan of the entire aircraft. Once again, if we go back to Google and we go back to this, we know that the wingspan is 112 feet 7 inches. So 112 feet 7 inches in millimeters is 34,305. So we just copy that value, go back to Fusion, press Finish Sketch, go to the top, right-click, Calibrate, and zoom in, just clicking on that white one there. And then zoom into the other one, click on the white one there, and control pasting the value there, and press enter. So that should be the correct value. Now you can already see that this is definitely correct because the red outline for the top view and the red outline for the front view align perfectly, at least from this distance. When you zoom in, I think there's a bit of a alignment issue with the symmetry, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem when we take into account all sides. Okay, again, we don't need the sketch anymore, so we can hide that sketch. Okay, so there's one more thing that we need to do, and that is adjust the position of the top view. So if we just right-click on top and click on Edit Canvas, then all we need to do is make sure that the nose of the aircraft is touching the origin. So that white dot that you can see there. So again, because this is going in increments of 500, it's not really going to snap to the middle point. So what I want to do in this case to not disturb the vertical position, I'm just going to enter maybe 2700, and that looks about right. Maybe try 800, and that looks even better. So I'm just going to do that. And you can see here that it's a little bit off symmetry, but if you zoom out enough, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. If you really want to fix it, you can. So I'm just maybe going to adjust it slightly a little bit by doing... Okay, I think that looks fine. All right, perfect. So now if I switch the origin off, you can see that if I roll around in 3D space, it makes sense. So let's just make sure that everything aligns up. So the tail aligns with the tail, the horizontal tail aligns with the horizontal tail, so that's perfect. The wings are also aligned, and the cockpits are aligned. So I think we've done a good job here. This is a good enough approximation to start modeling. Now, there is a more accurate way to ensure that your position and your scaling is correct, and that would be by drawing a sketch, making a rectangle of the exact dimensions, and then importing the canvas onto that sketch. That is a pretty straightforward method. If you guys want me to show that in a different video, leave it down in the comments. I'm happy to do that. But I think for this tutorial, we can move forward with this. Now, before we end this, there's one more thing that I like to do. You can sometimes see that you might start getting confused because there's a lot going on in the same place. So what I like to do is basically scatter these three blueprints in a way that they still retain their position and their scale, but they seem a little far away from each other. And what I mean by that, it just gives a bit of it just gives a bit more space when you model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll back in time, and the way you do that in Fusion 360 is if you just go to the bottom of the bar and just go back in time to before you did anything. So what we want to do now is under construct, we want to click on offset plane, and I'm going to click on the right plane, and we're just going to separate it somewhere there, and I'm going to create another plane on the front view and just put it over there. Okay, and now you'll see why we're doing this. So once we've created these two planes, we are going to go back to our present moment, and what we want to do is click on the right one, right click, edit canvas, and click where it says face. The face you want to click on now is the new plane that we created on the side. So that's what it's doing there. We want to repeat the same process for the front view, so edit canvas, and now we want to click on the back one. Now under construction, you can hide the two planes that you've created, and you'll see now that they still retain their position, but now they seem a little bit more scattered compared to where they were in the past. I think I want to do the same thing for the top view, so I'm going to go back in time again and just construct another plane that is from the top. So somewhere over there might do. Come back in time, top view, right click, edit canvas, and the face you want to select is a new one. And there we go. So now I think we've set up our entire blueprint. And once again, you can keep scanning to make sure that they are still in the correct position. So if we go on the right side, everything matches up. If you go on the front side, everything matches up. So now you may be wondering, well, why didn't we just do this in the front? Now you might be wondering, why didn't we just do this in the beginning? The reason is because we still wanted to make sure that everything was aligned and things made sense in 3D space, and then you scatter them. It just makes things a little bit more efficient, in my opinion. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and hopefully you've been able to follow everything I've said. If not, please feel free to leave a comment. Hopefully I can reply as soon as possible and help you out. There are two things I'm going to upload after the end of this video, and the first one is the blueprints themselves, so you can have access to the side view, the front view, and the top view cropped and ready to be imported. And I'm also going to be uploading the Fusion file up until this point, so that you can, in case you weren't able to follow this and you want to start modeling, you can just use the file that already has the blueprints in them and then follow along for the next tutorial. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you'd like to support me, please do like this video and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial.